You weren't supposed to be here!
Relax, Mom. This isn't your Christmas dinner.
Then why is he sitting beside you?
The room went silent.
My mother told me not to come home for Christmas because, according to her, I had a talent for ruining every room I entered. So I stayed away. What she didn't know was that the family who invited me in had one extra guest at their table. A man my parents had spent 6 months trying to avoid, and when my father finally looked past me and saw him holding a glass of red wine beside the Christmas tree, he went so pale I thought he might collapse. That was the moment I understood something I should have understood years earlier. I had never been the disaster in my family. I had been the witness. Hello. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 32 years old. I live in Ohio. And this is the story of the Christmas my family tried to erase me one last time and accidentally put me in the same room with the man who had everything I needed to expose them. 3 days before Christmas, my mother called me while I was folding laundry. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask whether I had finished shopping. She simply said, "Claire, your father and I have talked, and we think it would be better if you didn't come on Christmas Day." I sat down on the edge of my bed. Better for who? She exhaled through her nose. That little sound had followed me since childhood. It meant I was already being difficult. Don't start. Even as bringing Lauren and her parents. We want one peaceful holiday. No arguments. No old accusations. No scenes. My younger brother Evan was 30. He was also the reason for most of the old accusations. But in my family, the person who caused a problem and the person who pointed at the problem were never the same person. Evan could steal money, lie, crash a car, miss payments, disappear for days, insult relatives, and somehow the emergency always became my reaction to it. When I was 17, he took $200 from my father's desk. I saw him do it. When Dad noticed the money missing, I said what I had seen, even cried. My mother accused me of being jealous. My father grounded me for trying to destroy my brother's reputation. A week later, Evan bought a used stereo with cash. Nobody asked where the money came from. When I was 23, Evan borrowed my car without asking and backed it into a concrete post outside a bar. He called Dad before he called me. By the time I got there, the story had become that I had lent him the car, even though I knew he had been drinking. I hadn't even known he had my keys. Still, my father looked at me and said, "You always have to turn everything into drama." That sentence became the family religion. You always make things worse. You always have to be right. You always ruin good days. And now, 3 days before Christmas, my mother was using the same old script. I said, "You invited me a month ago." Things changed. What changed? Another pause. Then she said it. "You'll ruin it, Claire. Like you always do." The words were so familiar that they almost didn't hurt. Almost. I looked across my apartment at the little artificial tree I had decorated by myself. Under it were 3 wrapped gifts for my parents and 1 for Evan. I had spent nearly $400 trying to choose things they would like. My father wanted a vintage football jacket. My mother wanted a kitchen mixer attachment. Evan wanted headphones he could absolutely afford himself. I stared at those gifts while my mother waited for me to argue. Usually I did. Usually I tried to explain. Usually, I walked into the same courtroom and begged the same jury to reconsider a verdict they had reached when I was a child. This time, I didn't. I said, "Okay." She went quiet. I could hear that she hadn't expected it. "Okay. Yes, I won't come." "Well, good. That's probably for the best. Merry Christmas, Mom." I ended the call before she could say anything else. For about 10 minutes, I felt powerful. Then I cried so hard I had to sit on the bathroom floor. Not because I had nowhere to go. Because some stupid, stubborn part of me had still believed that one day they would want me there. The next morning at work, my friend Maya noticed immediately. Maya and I worked in the finance department of a regional hospital. I handled vendor compliance. She handled contracts. She had known me for 4 years, which meant she could read my face faster than I could hide it. She rolled her chair into my cubicle and put down 2 coffees. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Claire," I looked at her. My parents uninvited me from Christmas. Her expression changed. They did what? They want it peaceful. And you're apparently a natural disaster. Historically, yes. She stared at me for 3 seconds. Then she said, "You're coming to my house." No, that wasn't a question. Maya, your family doesn't even know me that well. My mother has been asking why I haven't brought you over for 2 years. That's different. It isn't. I don't want to intrude. She leaned closer. Claire, listen to me. An invitation is not an intrusion. That sentence hit me harder than it should have. I looked down at my coffee. She continued. My parents are doing Christmas Eve dinner. My sister, her husband, my aunt, 2 cousins. Very loud. Too much food. My dad will tell boring stories. My mother will force leftovers on you. Come. I tried to say no again. She ignored me. By lunch, she had texted her mother. By 3 o'clock, her mother had asked whether I liked pecan pie. By 5, I had been assigned a seat. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because there was something I hadn't told Maya. Something I had barely admitted to myself. 6 months earlier, I had received a letter from the Ohio Department of Taxation addressed to a company I didn't recognize. Bennett Ridge Consulting, LLC. The strange part was that the registered mailing address was my apartment. I assumed it was junk mail. Then a second letter came. Then a third. The third one mentioned an unpaid business tax balance of more than $40,000. I called the number on the notice. After 40 minutes of transfers, a woman asked me to confirm the last 4 digits of the responsible party's social security number. They were mine. My stomach went cold. I told her I had never created Bennett Ridge Consulting. She told me the company had been registered almost 4 years earlier. There had been filings, bank accounts, vendor payments, and according to the records she was looking at, I was the owner. I spent the rest of that day searching public databases. The LLC existed. My name was on it, and the mailing address had originally been my parents' house. The address had been changed to my apartment only 2 months earlier. I called my father. He went quiet for just a fraction too long. Then he laughed. That's probably something from when you helped with the family business. I had worked for Bennett Home Supply for 8 months after college. I had done invoices and inventory. I had never formed a company. I told him that. He became irritated. Claire, I don't remember every piece of paperwork from 10 years ago. It says the company was created 4 years ago. Another pause. Then he said, "You're overreacting." There it was, the old spell. You're overreacting. He told me he would ask the family accountant. A week later, my mother called and said it had been taken care of. I asked how. She said, "Your father fixed it. Stop digging around." I should have kept digging. Instead, I let myself be embarrassed. Embarrassed that I had made a fuss. Embarrassed that I didn't understand some business form. Embarrassed that maybe, once again, I was creating drama. But the letters stopped. For a while. Then, in November, I got a certified envelope from a law firm in Columbus. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a request for information. The firm represented a group of investors who had lost money through a construction financing arrangement connected to Bennett Ridge Consulting. My company. The company I had never created. I read the letter 5 times. There was a name at the bottom. Thomas Mercer. Attorney and certified fraud examiner. The letter asked me to contact his office. I didn't. I put it in a drawer. Even now, I hate admitting that. But fear can make intelligent people do ridiculous things. My entire childhood had trained me to believe that investigating my family was a greater sin than anything I might discover. So I put the letter away. Then Christmas came. And my family told me I wasn't welcome. On Christmas Eve, I drove to Maya's parents' house, carrying a bottle of wine, a bakery pie, and enough anxiety to power a small city. Their home was in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus. White lights lined the porch. Through the front windows, I could see people moving around a dining room. I sat in my car for almost 2 minutes. Then Maya came outside without a coat. She opened my passenger door. "Are you planning to celebrate Christmas in the driveway?" I was thinking about it. "Get out." She took the pie from me and started walking. I followed. The first thing her mother did was hug me. Not a polite side hug. A real hug. Claire, finally. We hear about you all the time. That frightened me more than hostility would have. Kindness used to make me suspicious. In my family, kindness usually meant someone wanted something. But nothing happened. Nobody tested me. Nobody asked me to prove I deserved to be there. Maya's sister handed me a drink. Her aunt asked about my job. Her cousins argued over a football game. A little boy wearing dinosaur pajamas ran through the kitchen carrying a roll of wrapping paper like a sword. It was messy. It was loud. It was safe, and that felt almost unreal. About 20 minutes after I arrived, Maya touched my arm. Come meet my dad. We walked into the den. A man in his early 60s stood near the fireplace talking to Maya's uncle. He had silver hair, rectangular glasses, and the calm posture of someone who spent his life listening carefully. Maya smiled. Dad, this is Claire Bennett. The man's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. His eyes sharpened. Bennett. I felt the air leave my lungs. Yes, Claire Elizabeth Bennett. Maya looked between us. Do you two know each other? I knew that voice. Or at least I knew the name attached to it. I had seen it at the bottom of the certified letter in my drawer. Thomas Mercer. I must have gone white because Maya grabbed my elbow. Her father didn't move closer. He didn't crowd me. He simply said, I believe I sent you a letter last month. I swallowed. You did? Maya said. Wait. What? Thomas looked at me carefully. You don't have to discuss anything tonight. I mean that. You're a guest in my home first. I nodded, but my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Maya pulled me toward the hallway. Claire, what is going on? I told her the shortest version I could. The mystery company. The tax letters, my father's explanation, the request from Thomas's firm. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, You never told me any of this. I thought it was probably nothing. She stared at me. A company exists in your name and owes $40,000. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. Claire. I know. No. I don't think you do. Her father appeared at the end of the hall but kept his distance. I can answer one question without getting into privileged information, he said. I looked at him. Am I in trouble? His expression softened. Based on what I know right now, I think you're much more likely to be a victim than a target. That sentence changed the night. Because suddenly, the fear I had been carrying for 6 months had a shape. Victim, not problem, not dramatic, not confused. Victim. Dinner was called 20 minutes later. I tried to act normal. I failed. Every few minutes, I caught Thomas looking at me, not suspiciously but thoughtfully. Finally, after the main course was served, he asked, Claire, did you ever sign loan guarantees for your father's business? No. Did you ever authorize anyone to open an account using your social security number? No. Did you ever receive distributions from Bennett Ridge Consulting? No. He nodded once. Maya's mother, Denise, set down her fork. Tom, is she in danger? Financially? Potentially. Legally. That depends on the documents. My hands started shaking. What documents? Thomas hesitated. Then he said, There are contracts carrying Claire's name. There are also electronic signatures tied to an email address that appears to belong to her. I have one personal email. He told me the address. It looked like mine, but one letter was different. My real address ended in 82. The one on the documents ended in 28. A mirror image. A fake account designed to look like mine. That was the first real twist. The second came 30 seconds later. Thomas said the recovery action his firm was handling involved more than unpaid taxes. Bennett Ridge had been used as a pass-through company. Money had come in from investors who believed they were funding building projects. Some of that money went to legitimate expenses. Some of it went somewhere else. How much? I asked. Thomas looked at me. Across the transactions we're examining, just under $800,000. The room went silent. My fork touched the plate. 800,000. I almost laughed because the number was too big to belong to my life. My parents don't have that kind of money. And Thomas said, Someone did. I thought of my brother's new truck. My mother's remodeled kitchen. My father's sudden fishing boat. The expensive trips they had taken while telling everyone business was slow. Then I remembered something else. 2 years earlier, my father had asked me to sign a stack of papers at his house. He said they were old employment records that needed to be cleaned up before the company switched payroll providers. I had signed 3 pages. Maybe 4. I hadn't read them carefully, I told Thomas. He asked, were any pages blank? My stomach dropped. One had been. There had been a yellow sticky note marking where I should sign. I could still see my father's finger tapping the line. Right there, Claire. Just helping us clean up the records, I whispered. I signed a blank page. Thomas didn't scold me. He just nodded slowly. Then we preserve everything. Emails, texts. Old paperwork, all of it. Maya touched my hand under the table. I was about to ask another question when headlights swept across the dining room wall. Denise looked toward the window. Are we expecting someone? Maya's uncle stood up. A car door slammed outside. Then another. My phone buzzed. Mom, I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Dad, then a text appeared, we're outside. Come home now. I stared at the screen. Maya read it over my shoulder. You have got to be kidding me. I hadn't told my parents where I was. At least, I didn't think I had. Then I remembered posting a picture of Maya's pie on my private social media story. I hadn't included the address. But I had tagged Maya. My mother had apparently done the rest. The doorbell rang. Denise moved toward the foyer. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. Please don't let them in. And Thomas looked at me. This is your call? That mattered. Not his house, not his rules. My call. I took a breath, opened the door. But I'm not leaving. Denise opened it. My parents stood on the porch. My father wore his long black coat. My mother held her purse against her body and wore the expression she used at church. The one that made her look warm, worried, and reasonable. Hello, she said. I'm so sorry to bother you. We're Claire's parents? Denise didn't smile. I gathered. My mother's eyes found me. Oh, thank God, Claire. Get your coat. I stayed where I was. She laughed lightly. We've had a misunderstanding. Christmas is no time for family tension. A misunderstanding. 3 days earlier, I was a holiday-destroying menace. Now I was a daughter they had crossed town to retrieve. I said, I'm staying. Her smile tightened. Don't do this here. Do what? Make a scene. I almost admired the consistency. My father stepped inside behind her. Claire, enough. Your mother is trying to fix this. No. She's trying to fix how it looks. His face hardened. Then he noticed the people around the dining room. His gaze moved from Maya, to Denise, to the relatives, and finally to Thomas. He froze. I watched recognition happen in real time. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, then closed. My mother followed his stare. When she saw Thomas Mercer, every bit of color disappeared from her face. Thomas didn't move. He held his napkin in one hand. Robert Bennett, he said. My father whispered Tom, not Mr. Mercer. Tom, they knew each other. That was the third twist. I turned to Thomas. You've met. My father answered too quickly. Years ago. Business? Thomas looked at me. More recently than that. My mother cut in. This is not appropriate. Thomas raised one eyebrow. You came to my house. For once, my mother had no immediate response. I looked at my father. What does he mean? More recently. Dad's jaw tightened. Claire, we're leaving? No. No. I had never said that word to him with a room full of witnesses. It felt like stepping off a cliff and discovering there was ground under me. Thomas put his napkin on the table. Robert, since you're here, perhaps you should tell your daughter why my office has been trying to contact her. My mother said, you have no right. I have every right to speak to Claire about documents carrying her name. My father looked at me. Then at him. Then back at me. You contacted him. No, he contacted me. For half a second, I saw panic in my father's face. And that was when I knew. Not suspected, knew. He had been afraid I would answer that letter. My mother tried another approach. Claire, sweetheart, there are complicated business matters you don't understand. I laughed. It came out sharper than I expected. I manage compliance for a hospital with a 9-figure operating budget. That's not the same. No. Apparently your version involves fake companies. Her expression changed. Just slightly. But enough. My brother wasn't there. Yet his name seemed to enter the room before I said it. Evan? I said. My father looked away. That told me everything. I turned to Thomas. Was my brother involved? Thomas answered carefully. His name appears on several vendor transfers. I can't tell you more than that tonight. My mother snapped. This is exactly what you do, Claire. You take incomplete information and destroy people with it. There it was. The sentence that used to work. The sentence that could turn me back into a frightened teenager. But this time there were other people in the room. And none of them looked at me like I was unstable. They looked at my parents. So I did something I had never done before. I asked for evidence. Thomas, do you still have the letter you sent me? Yes. Does your file contain copies of the documents? Yes. Can I formally authorize you to show me anything I'm legally entitled to see? Tomorrow, or after the holiday, yes. My father's voice rose. You are not hiring him. I looked at him. You don't get to decide that. You'll tear this family apart. I almost smiled. No. If the documents are real, somebody already did that. Silence. Then Maya's little nephew wandered into the room, holding a toy dinosaur. He looked at my father, looked at the tense adults, and quietly walked backward out again. For some reason, that nearly made me laugh. My mother took a step toward me. Her voice dropped. Claire, please, think about what you're doing. I am. Your father could lose the business. If he used my identity, maybe he should. She flinched. Not because I was cruel. Because I had finally stopped protecting them from consequences. Then she said something that changed the entire situation. We did it for Evan. She said it quickly, almost under her breath. My father turned toward her. Linda. But it was too late. I stared at her. Did what? She shook her head. I didn't mean. Did what? My father grabbed her elbow. We're leaving. Thomas's voice became very calm. I wouldn't discuss facts any further without counsel. My mother pulled her arm away from Dad. Years of resentment suddenly broke through her perfect holiday face. You think you're so smart, she said to me. You always have. Evan was drowning. He had debts. People were threatening to sue him. Your father had to restructure things. In my name. You had good credit. I felt physically sick. She kept going because panic makes people stupid. And you weren't using it for anything. You don't have children. You don't have a mortgage. You had room. Room. As if my identity were an empty garage they could store stolen furniture in. My father said, "Stop talking." My mother pointed at me. She owes this family something. I heard Maya inhale beside me. I asked, "Why?" "Because we raised you." I said, "You don't get to invoice me for childhood." Dines made a quiet sound that might have been a laugh. My mother's eyes flashed. My father stepped forward. Claire, listen carefully. Nobody stole anything from you. Some business structures were put in place. That's all. With a fake email. He stopped. With my social security number. His face tightened. With my signature on contracts I never saw. No answer. I looked at Thomas. How soon can I meet with you? December 26th. If you want. I want. My mother whispered. You vindictive little. She stopped herself before finishing. I looked at her. No. This is the first time in my life I'm not being vindictive. I'm being accurate. My father grabbed his coat lapels as if he could pull himself back together. He turned toward Thomas. If you encourage this, you'll regret it. Thomas didn't blink. That sounded like a threat. Dad's face changed. He knew he had made a mistake. Thomas continued. I suggest you leave my home. For once my parents did. No final speech. No dramatic apology. They walked out into the cold, got into their car, and disappeared down the street. I stood in the foyer staring at the closed door. My body started shaking. Not delicate trembling. Full body shaking. Maya put her arms around me, and the sentence I kept repeating was, they used my name. She said, I know. They used my name. I know. I had spent my whole life being accused of things I hadn't done. Now I was discovering that while they called me irresponsible, they had quietly built real irresponsibility in my identity. That Christmas dinner didn't continue normally. There was no way it could. But something strange happened. Nobody treated me like I had ruined the evening. Dines reheated my plate. Maya's uncle poured me water. Her sister found a blanket and put it around my shoulders. Thomas didn't interrogate me. He said, "Tonight, you eat. The paperwork can wait until the 26th. I looked around that table and nearly cried again. Not because my parents had shown up. Because 12 people had just witnessed chaos enter the room, and not one of them blamed me for bringing it. The morning after Christmas, I met Thomas at his office. I brought everything: tax letters, old texts, bank statements, the certified envelope, a box of papers I had saved from the 8 months I worked at my father's company. And one thing I almost forgot: an old laptop. Thomas had a forensic specialist copy the drive. 2 days later, they found emails. Years earlier, while I worked for the family business, my father had set up remote access on that laptop. I had forgotten about it. The logs showed repeated access long after I quit. Someone had used stored scans of my driver's license and tax forms. Someone had created the fake email. Someone had submitted business filings. The metadata tied several documents to an office computer at Bennett Home Supply. Then came the fourth twist. My brother Evan had not been drowning because of ordinary debt. He had been gambling heavily. Sports betting, private card games, online accounts. He owed people more than $200,000. My parents had started moving money to keep him afloat. At first, they used their own savings. Then business credit, then investor money. When lenders became nervous about my father's debt load, they needed a clean name. Mine. I had good credit because I lived modestly, paid every bill, and never asked my family for money. The very independence they mocked became the resource they exploited. They created Bennett Ridge Consulting with my information. They routed money through it. They used fake email approvals. They attached my name to guarantees. And whenever something required a handwritten signature, my father either copied an old one or used the blank page I had signed. The amount connected to my identity wasn't $800,000. That was only the amount Thomas's clients were tracking. Once investigators started combining records, the number crossed 1.3 million. I remember staring at that figure on a conference room screen, 317,842. For years, my family had called me reckless. The largest financial risk I had ever taken was financing a used Honda. Thomas asked whether I wanted to cooperate with investigators. I said yes. That one word ended my old life. Over the next 3 months, everything moved fast. My attorney helped me file identity theft reports. Fraud alerts went on my credit. Tax authorities were notified. The state opened a formal investigation. Then federal investigators became interested, because some transfers had crossed state lines. I handed over my phone. I handed over emails. I gave a statement. And for the first time in my life, people asked me what happened and then wrote down my answer as if it mattered. My parents tried every strategy they knew. First came anger. My father left a voicemail saying I was destroying 30 years of work over paperwork technicalities. Then came guilt. My mother emailed me photographs from childhood, birthday cakes, family vacations, Christmas mornings. Under one picture she wrote, "We weren't perfect, but we loved you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I noticed something. In almost every family photo, Evan was in the center. I was at the edge. Sometimes memory tells the truth before you're ready to hear it. Then came bargaining. My father offered to pay my legal bills if I corrected the misunderstanding. My attorney told him all communication had to go through counsel. Then came the smear campaign. Relatives started calling. An aunt told me my mother was physically sick because of what I was doing. A cousin said family problems should stay private. I asked him one question. If someone opened $1 million company in your name, would you keep it private? He didn't have an answer. The biggest surprise came from Evan. He texted me from a number I didn't know. "Please call me. Dad made it worse than it was. I never wanted you hurt." I didn't call. I sent the message to my attorney. 2 weeks later, Evan asked to cooperate with investigators. Apparently, loyalty becomes flexible when prison becomes possible. He gave them records. He admitted my father had planned the LLC structure. He admitted my mother knew. He admitted he had used money from the accounts. And he admitted something else. The reason my parents had uninvited me from Christmas was not Lauren's family. It wasn't peace. It wasn't my attitude. My father had learned that Thomas Mercer's daughter worked with me. He knew Maya and I were friends. He was terrified I might meet Thomas. So my mother was told to keep me home, or keep me away from any gathering where Maya might be. They had banned me from Christmas to keep me from a man whose letter was already sitting in my drawer. When they later saw my social media story and realized I was at Maya's parents' house, panic took over. They drove there to pull me out before I learned anything. That was why they arrived pretending to be concerned parents. That was why my father went pale. That was why my mother suddenly cared how lonely I looked. They weren't rescuing me. They were retrieving evidence before it could speak. When I learned that, something inside me became very calm. All those years I had wondered what was wrong with me. Why my family found me difficult. Why asking simple questions created explosions. Why telling the truth was treated like betrayal. Now I knew. People who survive by controlling the story are terrified of the person who keeps noticing the facts. By summer, Bennett Home Supply was gone. The company entered bankruptcy after lenders froze credit and several investors sued. My father was charged with multiple financial offenses. I won't pretend the legal process was simple or quick, but he eventually accepted a plea agreement. My mother avoided prison, but not consequences. She admitted her role in false filings and was ordered to pay restitution connected to funds she had personally helped move. Evan's deal was lighter because he cooperated early. He still lost the truck, the apartment, the girlfriend he had been so proud to bring to Christmas, and most of the people who had mistaken charm for character. And me, I kept my job. I kept my apartment. My credit took months to repair, but it was repaired. The tax debt attached to the fraudulent company was separated from me. The fake guarantees were challenged. My name was cleared. But I wasn't finished. For my entire life, my family had cared about one thing more than truth: appearance. So I gave them the one consequence they couldn't manipulate. I stopped helping them look normal. I didn't post accusations online. I didn't make revenge videos. I didn't call their friends. I simply stopped lying for them. When relatives asked why I wasn't speaking to my parents, I told the truth. My identity was used to open a company and move money without my permission. There is a court record. You can read it. When someone said my father had only been trying to save Evan, I said, he could have used his own name. When someone said my mother had been caught between her children, I said, she chose which child to protect. When someone asked if I could forgive them, I said, forgiveness and access are different things. That sentence became my boundary. A year later, Christmas came again. My mother sent me a card. There was no apology inside. Just one sentence. Family shouldn't spend Christmas apart. I read it in my kitchen. Then I placed it in the recycling bin. That evening, I drove to Maya's parents' house. There were white lights on the porch again. Maya opened the door before I could knock. This time, I wasn't carrying a nervous bakery pie. I was carrying Denise's favorite wine and a ridiculous dinosaur toy for her grandson. Thomas was near the fireplace. He raised his glass when he saw me. Any mysterious companies in your name this year? None. Excellent progress. Maya groaned. Dad, don't make fraud jokes at Christmas. I waited a full year. We laughed. And that's the part I want people to understand. Justice wasn't watching my parents lose money. It wasn't seeing my brother panic. It wasn't even hearing a prosecutor say my father's name in court. Justice was sitting at a table where nobody needed me to be guilty so somebody else could stay innocent. Justice was eating dinner without monitoring every face in the room. Justice was understanding that being excluded from one family had led me directly to people who made room for me without asking me to disappear first. Near the end of the night, Maya's mother brought out dessert. Everyone was talking at once. A child was crying because someone had broken his toy. Two people were arguing about football. Someone spilled wine on a napkin, and I noticed my body didn't tense. I didn't wait to be blamed. I didn't start calculating how to make myself smaller. I just sat there, present, safe, free. For most of my life, my parents told me I ruined everything. They were wrong. I didn't ruin their family. I ruined the lie that kept their family comfortable. And if telling the truth is what finally breaks the table, you were never allowed to sit at peacefully. Maybe the table was already broken. That Christmas, my parents told me not to come home. So I didn't. And it turned out that staying away from their house was the first time I truly found my way home.